Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With me today is Daniel McAdams, our co-host. Daniel, good to see you today.
How are you this morning, Dr. Paul?
Doing good. Doing good. We're going to talk about the coronavirus to some degree and what's going on in the world, but we're going to talk about a couple cities that have comments about the tragic circumstances that our government has created. So we'll start with one city that's in the news, and it deserves a little bit of ridicule, maybe, if we're allowed to do that. That has to do with Cuomo running New York City and the state, and along with de Blasio. Anyway, he had a little talk yesterday. I don't know whether it was a press conference or what, but the headline was Andrew Cuomo begs rich hedge funders fleeing New York City, please come back. Are they all going to do that? But the whole thing is he doesn't have. He hasn't changed his tune.
Yeah.
Please come back so I can gouge you again.
Yeah.
And they're going to be. He thinks they're stupid enough to come rallying back. But they're looking for $60 billion, and they're asking Trump for it, and they're trying to get it. They probably will, and all this kind of stuff. But just in case, we need you. And I'm a nice guy. He says, I'm the kind of guy, well, I'll take you out to dinner. I mean, what kind of nonsense is this? And when I saw that and listened to him there, it was really, I thought, a little bit pathetic. and it reminded me of something that happened in one of the campaigns when Jeb Bush was running.
Yeah.
And he went in with his prepared speech, and Jeb's a pretty decent person for a politician, But he got in there and going. But he was always pausing for his applause line. He was reading my applause line. He says, he got dumbfounded. He was frustrated. He says, please clap. This is almost like what Cuomo's doing. Please come. Please come. We'll take better care of you. Sure. Are they going to change their philosophy? That's one of the things we've talked about so often over the years now that we've been doing this, is they never change their mind, no matter how unsuccessful they are in economics, in foreign policy, or in managing viruses in their medical treatment. They never really change their mind. Of course, I met maybe 2 or 3 or 4 in Washington that had significant changes in their core beliefs, and I was always so impressed, because that's, I think, the most important thing we do is try to get people to change their core beliefs, and then everything else comes together if they decide what their role of government ought to be. But right now, I don't think anybody knows exactly what the role ought to be under these circumstances, and they're looking for political solutions to complex problems, and they think there's one answer. You do it our way, and everything is going to be okay. They don't even give the benefit of the doubt that even we on our side of the argument, we don't argue the case that we have perfect knowledge. We argue the case for having allowable, conversation. And here, Trump got penalized this week for saying that, like he was censored by Facebook.
Yeah.
They don't want the debate, and I think that should be shown as a mission of defeat. And the big question now is whether Biden is even going to debate Trump. So they would like to avoid it, and I think they want help. They'll come back and they'll think they'll get around it and still get help. They cannot understand why, if they tear up a city and they lock out the police, why they shouldn't immediately get money to rebuild their city. Yeah. I think they believe that. They believe that's a right. They put it in that category. It's rather disturbing. That's why I'm interested in core beliefs, and we have our work cut out for us.
We do. Now here's Cuomo. He killed all the old people. He killed the economy, and now he can't figure out why people don't want to live there. It's amazing. Well, here's why they don't want to live there. Here's why they won't come back. Let's look at the next slide. Here's the New York Times. 1 million job loss, a heart attack for the New York City economy. That wasn't caused by the virus. That was caused by the reaction to the virus. Why would you want to move back to New York City, a city of restaurants, a city of life, a city where there's so much culture and happenings? Well, let's look at the next slide. Here's why people don't want to go back. Here's de Blasio. Opening restaurants will start next summer, June 1st, 2021. So you think, wow, they must be still struggling with enormous deaths in New York. You can't even go get a meal until next June, even though Cuomo will cook you a meal if you come back. So it must be bad. So here's the next slide. Daily deaths in New York. Look at that, Dr. Paul. Wow, that's a weird spike. And the other thing is that de Blasio, who we looked at before, he's a complete tyrant. He wants to he's putting in checkpoints all around the city, putting in checkpoints at every major entry point, and he's telling people who enter from, the police are there, and if you come from a long list of places that are banned, they said, okay, you can come in, but you have to quarantine for 14 days. Go stay in some flea bag hotel for 14 days, and you have to fill out a health travel form, which will enable them to track and surveil you for contact tracing. So he's setting up a bunch of checkpoints. He doesn't understand why people don't think it's great. I think here's a new ad campaign for coming into New York. Let's look at the next one. You are leaving the American sector. Checkpoint Charlie. Here's the New York. No wonder nobody wants to go back to that city.
That's so sad. But my question is, where is the resistance?
Yeah.
You know, why aren't people resisting it? And we report when we know about it, when people are starting to stand up and starting to resist. But they don't understand, well, this isn't even the government doing this. This is non-government, you know, where they just have edicts. They have executive orders by city councilmen and state reps and mayors and county commissioners, all this. So they're not really even official. But even if they were official, I always liked the principle that, you know, when I took a position that I was challenging in the best way I could on certain policies, such as war and financial and monetary things, that it was challenging the status quo and trying to convert people to our thinking. And they would, especially on foreign policy, you could get booed for saying some of these things because you're not patriotic. Because if you're a good patriot, you support the state. But I don't think that's what the founders thought. I don't think patriotism or the early patriots were the ones who were trying to defend the king and all that the king was doing to the Americans at that time. So I think people have different understanding, different definition, but it's standing up to the state and state authority. And of course, I still think there's a lot of room for nonviolent behavior, you know, but you can stand up to it. These aren't even laws that are standing up. It's just willy-nilly politicians saying things. People aren't rolling over to a powerful, dumb law. They're rolling over to an edict. And this whole thing, I mean, what authority did de Blasio have and Cuomo for regulating traffic? You can't come in from New Jersey. Is there going to be a civil war up there pretty soon? There's civil strife, I know that.
Yeah. Well, speaking of begging, there's some begging going on in Harris County. Let's look up that next slide. Dr. Paul, we talked about this. Local officials are begging Houstonians to get tested for COVID-19 as the testing numbers decline. They're testing. They got to get those case numbers up so that they can continue to shut things down. But unfortunately for them, and I'm sure they're double counting these retests as well, unfortunately for them, the cases are declining, and so they're saying, please come back. Please come back for your testing.
But they won't even give consideration to the fact that things might get better in 3 or 4 months, even though they're better right now. Oh, no, we don't concede that because we still haven't had our second wave yet. And besides, that new virus is about due in June, you know, and then we have to keep going on and on. But I think it's part of the strategy. I don't think it's just that they're poor managers. I think when you see the successes of the far left and the Marxist movement, it's very consistent. It's very, people who have studied Marxism say this is just not an accident. It's just not willy-nilly people acting spontaneously. They have a plan and a strategy, and it seems to be working for them. But I think our side, we have such a powerful message, the powerful message of liberty and self-reliance and prosperity and all the wonderful things that I think come from a free people making their own decisions. But no, the authoritarians are on the high ground now because they're the only ones who kid. They get the moral high ground because we care about these poor people. And those Republicans, conservatives, and libertarians, they don't care about people. Then all you have to do is look and compare this difference in the states. Those that are run by the Marxists and the radical left, and that's where the poverty and the violence is. If we just compared them with violence, compared to, say, a Western state that lives with different principles, and they still have police around to help, but it's so different, and yet it just doesn't make an impression on some of these people. They say, no, we just need more of your money. More of your money and more controls. And I think what's going on in Houston is they would like to have more records. Oh, he was tested and he was negative, or he was tested and he was positive, and I think it's always a plan, part of the plan, on how we're gonna push the vaccine. And we've talked about it, how they're having these practice sessions and study sessions on how we convince people how necessary it is to have a vaccine. And it's all, propaganda and pressure, and one tool that they use, and it's constantly used, in spite of the good news here, they're still terrorizing the people, and scaring them to death and say, I can't do anything. I don't think we should go to school until we have a vaccine. And then the vaccine will be the problem. So it's a tragedy that people don't change their minds when their policies don't work. That's it.
Well, there's a serious side to the Houston, this article even that we put up. And this is Dr. Joseph Veron. He's the United Memorial Medical Center Chief Medical Officer. He said that 50% of the people that are tested there, or that they're positive, have no symptoms. They're asymptomatic. 50%. But here's what he said. Listen to this quote. In all honesty, you could be killing people without knowing it. And that really is, I think, an incitement to violence, because this fuels all the insanity that we're seeing across the country, where they're shooting people without masks, pouring coffee in their faces, punching them out. He is fueling that. And this is why people are flipping out. But what it really does is show the total incompetence of the response. If half the people that even have it don't even get sick at all, how can that be an excuse to keep them locked up and masked up and shoved inside? Whereas, wouldn't the better thing be what others have done, which is to protect those that are vulnerable, right?
And what they've done is they've turned it on its head, which they're capable of doing, that the person that's living peacefully and want to change people's mind are the enemy. But that what they're saying now is that these people, you're going to kill people.
Yeah, you're going to kill people.
So they're on the defense. Oh, we're defending against these evil people. And those are the ones who are initiating violence. They'll even use libertarian language.
Yeah.
They're initiating the aggression, and therefore this is self-defense.
Yeah.
And that's why these people can go and spray people and kill people and do all these things. So they really have been able to distort things. They distort meanings. It's the old saying, distort the meaning of words, and confuse them about philosophy, always pretend you have the moral high ground, and hide all the facts that they're a disaster, they're authoritarians, and everything they touch turns to dust.
Yeah, it does, literally. Well, here's a couple of graphs about Houston. Here's why they're so desperate to have people come get tested again and again and again. Let's look at this next one. This is an epidemiological curve of cases over time in Harris County. And you can see the rapid decline of cases over time. That's why they want you to go back. Come back every day, get tested every day. But this is true in a broader sense. Let's look at the next chart too. This is the entire Sun Belt spike, and we talk about this a lot. This brings us up to yesterday. Texas, California, Florida, Arizona, all completely over the spike that happened about 2.5 weeks ago. And the third one is Arizona, which is very dramatic. People were screaming that why isn't Arizona mandating face masks? Just a couple of weeks ago, they were saying that. They're trying to kill people. Let's look at the next slide really quick. And here's Arizona. It's very dramatic. Detected cases, discharges from hospital, inpatient, ICU census, down, down, down. In an unbelievable free fall is Arizona. And that's why they're desperate to find something else to get people excited about. And that's something now. Well, let's move on to L.A. Speaking of that.
Yeah, L.A. Is certainly on their march. The mayor Garcetti.
Yeah.
And he's another authoritarian. He's
Totally.
the Western, the Western authoritarian versus the Eastern authoritarian. Thank goodness there's a middle of America still has a little bit of common sense.
A little bit, yeah.
But we need to keep it a secret because things aren't all that bad in Texas, but we may have an influx. Huh? We want to change the whole country because we need some improvements. We'd like to change the attitude of everybody across the country in order for us to live more sensibly. But you know, Garcetti had a long quote in here. I have a little thing here, a little bit I wanted to use. And this comes from Garcetti. He says, he was talking about people's behavior. He says, your behavior can save a life and take a life, Garcetti said. And that life could be yours. That's hysteria, scare the people to death. And then he goes on to say, this is his quote, "The peak is not here yet." You just proved it was here. Here and gone. Yeah. What are they going to do? They're panicking. That's what they're doing. And then he follows on. And maybe some kids are going to see this. And he says, it is going to be bad. And if they continue to do what they're doing, the way they've treated the children, they're destroying a whole generation. It's going to be bad if we continue to do this. But no, they're out there saying that, that if our side continues to do this, it's going to be really bad. So we need to fall into the trap of using this one size fits all, and that is no matter what you do the same thing. They don't want to say, well, cities could be different, states could be different, age could be different. This is time you really need individual approaches, and that's why medicine used to be totally like that. But this is the extreme danger of medicine because it's been universalized and regulated, and now it's controlled by bureaucrats. And this is what you have to do, and everybody has to line up, and they have people lining up. But of course, we saw a statistic yesterday that showed that the numbers of people becoming skeptical is growing, and I think that's good.
But you're right to call him an authoritarian. Let's look at this next clip. Here's what he came up with yesterday. Because young people in L.A. County and in the city of L.A., they want to get together with their friends. He says, if you have a party in your house, I'm going to shut off your water and your power. So young people are not allowed to get together. This goes back with what Trump said, which he was so hammered for, saying that basically young people seem to be pretty immune. Well, I went and looked up the CDC's own numbers for people younger than 24 years dying in the country. There is less than 1 in a million chance of dying if you are under 24. There have been 270 deaths in the entire country of under 24 people, under 24 years from COVID. Less than 1 in a million. Change that. You have an odd of being struck by lightning is only 1 in 700,000. You're literally more likely to be struck by lightning if you're under 24 than catch COVID. But here's what he's doing. He didn't even say if you're suspected of having a party, we're going to shut off your water and power. That may actually literally kill people. And here's California. You mentioned earlier, the peak's not here yet. It's coming. It's going to be terrible. Well, here's the confirmed patients for COVID. Looks like the peak is over. Let's look at the deaths coming up next. The deaths look like it's over. It's certainly not spiking anymore. And that's California. And then let's look at daily new cases in California in total. Look at that, Dr. Paul. He said the peak isn't here yet. It's going to be horrible. Well, the numbers, I'm afraid, are not on his side. I think he just likes the idea of shutting off people's power who are having a nice time.
Okay, what if he does that and people die
Yeah.
because they didn't have either the heat or the cold or whatever? What if there's some type of electronic equipment used for health reasons?
Yeah, CPAP or something like that.
But nobody's considering the fact or thinking much about it. These guys are criminals.
Yeah.
They're anxious not to have any police burning down buildings, and of course there's no police on what they're doing, and maybe that's their goal. We don't want to be policed either, but This is a very dangerous situation. Well, all government action I consider a danger until proven otherwise, because I don't. It's not designed to promote wisdom and good judgment and bring people together. It's from my view, it's designed to try to get up a couple definitions, like what is private property and what are your rights with your private property, and how do you have contracts and this sort of thing. But no. They're getting into this minutia of this stuff. That, okay, if you don't do as we say, we're going to cut off your water. Well, they don't have a moral right. They don't have a constitutional right. There's no legal right. And yet, where is the resistance? Where are the people saying, hadn't that? They say, well, they haven't done it to my house yet.
Yeah, just wait.
So bad of the trends that are happening right now.
Well, we're getting depressed, so we should move on to Sweden, because that's what we next want to talk about. And that'll cheer us up a little bit, because they've had a success and they want to give us some advice about what to do.
Yeah, no, there was a good headline on Sweden. Of course, they're not held in high esteem in the world press.
Not by the Garcettis of the world either.
Yeah. Okay, this one is Sweden top virologist has a message on how, this is the good guy, they designed the program for Switzerland. His message on how to defeat coronavirus. Can you believe it? He said this out loud in bold print. Open schools and no mask. Now that's radicalism. And all I say is, let people make up their own mind.
Yeah.
I mean, people get frightened. They want to put their kids in private school or something, or they don't like what's going on. But this whole idea that if you don't do it our way, we're going to punish you, and you're going to be in big trouble, and you're going to have a stamp of approval, and you're going to have a biological passport put in you so that we know exactly what you're doing. Of course, everybody better start worrying about that.
Yeah, it is a worry. But he pointed out that this is the architect, Dr. Tagnell, of the Sweden's thus far successful, I mean, anything can happen, but thus far successful strategy. He basically said that masks are not really effective in this. He said, look at Spain. They had a very strict mask rule, and they're spiking again. It's not an effective tool. We've discounted that. He said, we decided in the spring when this thing was coming that we were going to leave the school and daycare centers open. And we did that because we didn't think that young people were particularly vulnerable. And he said, we did not find a huge bearing on the children of doing this. He said they do get infected, but they seldom get seriously ill. And this is interesting. He said they don't seem to spread the infection to other parts of society. And that's what you won't find here. That's why they've got these little 2-year-olds with the masks on. He says, no masks, open your schools.
Yeah. It's too bad they're not comparing once again. Where is it successful and where isn't? And they're overwhelmed with this authoritarianism that they've inherited, because I think they have a natural instinct. A lot of politicians are like that. They like the power that they have, but it just seems like that is epidemic right now in this country. I bet you there's never been this much increase in the desire of local officials to become authoritarians and overwhelm us. Most of the time, they thought, well, a city council or the school board or something like that. Even school board members are involved in this thing. And it was something the other day, we're not going to open these schools until you settle the global warming problem. You have to do ABC, and they're right on the board for the Marxists. Do this. So there's a lot of people that would like a much more sane problem, but I think it's the principle of it. What do you believe in, and how do you persuade people? It won't be by force. And I think the best argument for saying, well, this might not be perfect. Fine, that's why we don't want you doing it. But they think we would be imperfect, but they're not imperfect, because they will know exactly who should get the vaccine and how much. I think I saw something today that it's like $35 to $40 per shot. That's what the cost will be. Oh, that's not too much. But how many, when you're doing millions and millions?
Hundreds of millions.
Do you think anybody makes profit on that?
No, it's the goodness of their heart. But the school school year is a big issue. It's an absolute nightmare for parents. Parents are panicking. They're looking into homeschooling for the first time. A lot of them are. And in fact, we had an open house, a homeschooling open house over here in Brazoria last week. We had a lot of families that were very curious. It's a big deal because parents, they're not afraid of sending their kids to school, but they don't like all this garbage that's going along with it. And so, our friend Tom Woods, asked us to talk a little bit about the Ron Paul curriculum, because this is a good alternative for people looking for a way to give their kids a great education without having all this hassle of math and God knows what's going on with it. Well, Tom, he created 400 videos for the program. He's very much a part of it, and he wants to give an option for parents who are looking for something different. He's actually, through his site, and it's up here, ronpaulhomeschool.com, he's offering $160 in bonuses for families that join. And that's coming at a good time when families are struggling. He's going to bonus for joining. As you know, my son did the Ron Paul homeschool curriculum, and it was very successful. Our daughter's going to be starting it this year. The best part about it is the kids are self-taught. They learn to motivate themselves. And actually this year, I think we're going to sit in on Tom's Western Civ class because it really had such an effect. It will change your kids' lives. So I would just tell our viewers to give that a thought as well. And visit Tom Woods over there at ronpaulhomeschool.com and get your discount. Why not?
Well, Daniel, I remember when you signed up your son, and you said something. It was coming across negative, and what's the matter? What's the matter? He said, "Well, I don't think I like your program." I said, "Why is that?" He said, "Benjamin, your son, you asked a little bit of discipline. Evidently, he has some chores to do. Come out and help you when you have to mow the lawn." And he says, he's so hard to get out and do his chores. He says he likes to stay there and just read Tom Woods. So I tell you what, there have been a lot of, it's the principle of it all too. And, there are quite a few different homeschooling groups out there, but Tom is just unbelievable at what he can do, and I have to work hard at doing a few short videos, but he's done these, and that's sort of standalone. But he's very popular on the curriculum program.
Yeah, he is, absolutely. Well, I'm going to close out, Dr. Paul, and it's Thursday, so we got to do Villain of the Week. This is not going to be a big surprise to people, because this guy, he is not only an authoritarian, he is not only a monster, he's an absolute kook. He really is. Put up his picture. Here's our Villain of the Week, Mayor Garcetti. The guy is an absolute nutcase. Here's a quote from this press conference that Dr. Paul referenced earlier. Let's go to the next clip. Here's what he said. "We need to be prepared for some of the darkness that is ahead. Each of us can be a light. We can light a match of hope. We can navigate that tunnel with each other and not alone. And more importantly, what we can do to ensure that people exit that tunnel together and that our city will rise again." Garcetti, Villain and Kook of the Week.
And the most gigantic fibber we've heard from in a long time, but it's a lot. We could use a lot stronger word than fibber.
Yeah, we could.
So, no, that's very good, and I want to thank our viewers today for tuning in and for the support you have given us. Because things are going well with our program here, and we're reaching a lot of people, and I think people's minds are being changed. And quite frankly, we look at the numbers of people who sign up and write in and all, but I don't even consider that as important as what individuals do. Because my thoughts are that we all have an obligation, if we come across the understanding of what the freedom philosophy is all about, and you believe in it, and you believe it's a good moral principle, and it's good economics, and it would be good for peace, I think then, because you're in a unique position, because you're in a small category, because most people never get to that point of one way or the other. They're not, the average people in the street that's going along with this Marxism, they're really not Marxists. And there's going to be a lot of people that aren't going to say, "Oh yes, I've endorsed now, the libertarian philosophy." I don't think that's going to happen. And they said that the numbers, percentage-wise, of the people that supported our revolution against the British Empire, it was pretty small, but they were leaders. And that's why I think if you come to the conclusion that believing in the moral principles that defends liberty and believing that it produces the most amount of prosperity and peace, I think we who believe that have a moral obligation to spread it. Besides, I think that I would be a very unhappy person if I couldn't do it, because I think that even though we don't know who we reach, because there's a lot of people out doing it out there, and I meet them every day, and they say, oh, I have this group, and I have this group, and I have this group. So there's a lot. So I don't think anybody can measure the good that they might do by watching some numbers. So I encourage people who get, are being introduced to the cause of liberty to study it and understand it and try to explain it, and realizing that it's imperfect too, but compared to the alternative of perpetual lying by authoritarians that write their own laws, that there's a big difference. And I'm convinced that the freedom philosophy gives us the chance for the greatest amount of prosperity and the best chance for peace. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.